Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of The Crew by Sadir S. Samir, which is a 2022 comedic fantasy. It's a self-published book. I am dying. I am literally dying because this book was so much fun. I got it on BookBub, so here comes one of my favorite gifts. I'd buy that for $1. I definitely did, and it was totally worth way more than that. I think I might just buy the paperback because I liked it that much. Of course, humor is a very subjective thing, but I found this book absolutely hilarious. My favorite type of humor is absurdity mixed with wit or subversive takes. Think like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. This book doesn't have as much in the latter, but it definitely takes the absurdity to a level that goes beyond ridiculous, to the point that you know the author knows they're being insane, but that's where the humor comes from. It's definitely not humor that tries to pander to everyone, and it definitely doesn't punch down. It's a humor that relies on surprise and utter bamboozlement of the reader, as you honestly have no idea what's going to happen next. It is an absolute riot. And I haven't even told you what it's about yet, so I will do that right now. There are no spoilers in this review, just so you know. Varcade fled to the deserts of Hera to escape his past as an educator, a member of an order of zealot warrior monks that aims to shape the world according to their sacred teachings by force. Varcade makes his living as a reckless sword for hire, caring only about himself, until his self-centered lifestyle is turned on its head when he is contracted to recruit a misfit team of unruly assassins and take out the mighty Bone Lord of Akrab. But the Bone Lord is aware of the plot and sends her band of dusters to stop them. Individuals who have gained bizarre and lethal magic powers by snorting the pulverized bones of dead gods. Sorry. Hunted by educators and dusters in a city-state where an escalating conflict between human and demon population threatens to boil over in a civil war, will Varcade and his ragtag crew save Akrab from the cruel Bone Lord, or will they make things even worse? So, the plot of this novel, despite all of that, is actually quite light. If it were a straight-up fantasy, I would be calling it kind of simple or a bit predictable. But because comedy is such an integral part of the story, and the fantasy world is almost more just like the setting, it completely works. Most of the novel is thus following Edgar, the Bone Lord's previous spy master, and Varcade as they wander around the city recruiting weirdos and lunatics for their fight. The light plot also works because the setting has a lot more depth. It's an Arabic-based fantasy, not Western, which was really fun because I haven't read a ton of those, and the city features both humans and a society of refugee demons that has entered the world some years ago via a portal. Escaped something terrible happening in their homeworld, they headed into Hera, but because they were seen as invaders, they entered into a war with the humans there. Now they live in this kind of ghetto of the city, essentially. Think District 9, but like not that terrible. We also get some other fantasy lore as well thrown in here. God dust, as you heard from the introduction, is literally the dust of dead gods that people snort to gain powers. Of course, it's highly, highly addictive, and it makes you crazy. It also kind of warps you a bit. It's, this actually plays, this aspect is really fun. Varcade, as you heard in the thing, hails from this cultist warrior monk society that indoctrinates children to their sect, but also enhances them with powers. So it's got a lot of fantasy tropes going on. There's some other stuff too, but going into the book blind is honestly the best course. I'm not going to talk about the dusters at all because you have to just read about them because I don't want to spoil it because it was so fun to just be like, what? I also really appreciated in the book the lack of sexism and traditional gender roles. We have women soldiers, warriors, leaders, and while the cast is male heavy, the world did not feel like some fantasy novels where women don't seem to exist aside as mothers and sex workers, so that was good. The characters themselves are an absolute riot. I honestly don't want to say too much about them because each of them is brilliant, either in their lunacy or because they serve as a sane person amidst the chaos to kind of even things out. I can't decide whether Biter or Zuba are my favorites, though Vashi also intrigued me. I pretty much loved all the characters. The action scenes are a lot of fun, mainly because they're also kind of based on comedy. One thing I will say is that this novel definitely has some anachronisms. Okay, well, I guess fantasy can't really be anachronistic because it's a fantasy world, but you know what I mean, words that we use today. Mainly that characters often use modern turns of phrase. If this were not a comedy, I would absolutely hate that, but the occasional modern phrase in the story actually serves to remind us that it is a farce, so it works really well. It's also kind of funny all of a sudden, and then he's just like, whatever, or you're weird, things like that. I do have a couple of critiques of the book. While it's clearly been proofread, it's a very well put together book. Some of the sentences are a bit clunky, mainly instances where the description will repeat what a dialogue has already implied. That's just me also being an editor, so I don't know. There's a reconciliation at the end between two characters, but it fell very flat to me. I'm not sure if they are in love or just friends, and I felt it should have been a bit more obvious because it seemed like there was kind of a build up to that didn't happen. I'm assuming there will be more books in the series, but one character's fate or kind of explanation is left completely unexplained. But unlike some of the humor parts where that was deliberate, which is why it's kind of funny, this felt like a bit of a loose end, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, what's the deal with that person? I guess we'll never know. I mean, if there's a second book, I'm assuming it'll be addressed, I hope. I don't know. Anyway, so these, though, are all minor things. If I gave it stars, I would give it 5 stars on Goodreads and then like 4.5 on Storygraph. I honestly couldn't stop reading it. I was obsessed with it, and I want more of it. Overall, it reminds me of A. Martinez's stuff. I've got a couple of his here. A. Martinez, this was his first one, Gil's Fright Diner. He writes this kind of quirky horror, fantasy, mythology, comedy, and this humor fell exactly in line with his stuff. He also wrote this one. There's also this one that actually reminded me a lot of this one a lot, and I love this one almost as much. So, yeah, if you like A. Martinez's stuff, I think you'll definitely like The Crew, and I highly recommend it. It is a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks for watching, and